Hello, and welcome to Lodestar's Lending Leaders. I'm Jim Paolino, founder and CEO of Lodestar Software Solutions. On this podcast, I'm going to be talking to leaders in the mortgage and real estate industries. Our goal is to talk about current events, interesting things from their end of the industry, and anything else that we feel is fascinating. Lodestar's Lending Leaders. On this episode, we're going to have another of our America's Next Top Homebuyer segment. I would like to introduce a very close friend of mine, Dr. Justin Dowlatshahi. You're going to hear me call him Boo Boo throughout this podcast, so I'm just going to get that out of the way right now. That was his nickname from the fifth grade bus. And even though he is a doctor, I'm just going to call him Boo Boo throughout this process anyway. Justin closed on his first home on Monday, so congratulations. We'd like to have him on for this. He's also a frontline healthcare worker right now in the middle of a pandemic, so thank you for taking time away from your schedule to talk to us about the joys of home buying and home ownership.
All right. I'm ready. Hit me.
Okay, you closed on Monday. You're living down in the Miami area. Let's go, how did this process start? Like, just walk us through, when did you want to start looking for a home? What was that like? And we'll just roll with it.
Yeah. So my partner and myself, Carla, were really honestly probably starting to look for homes in, I would say, March, April 2020, when all this pandemic really started kicking up, so to speak. So I can't say for sure whether or not it started as a hobby, more or less, and developed more into a serious search thereafter. But, more towards from April towards like June, July is really when we actually found one of the first properties that we really wanted to pursue. And, at that point, it was a little hard putting together some funds. We actually went through something called or attempted to go through something called a physician First Time Homeowner loan, which, specific banks have set up for physicians in particular, usually giving them, because again, they know our income is usually pretty consistent and something trustworthy, so to speak, I guess. They were able to put together, I think, something that we would have to put down, I think it was a 5% down payment on a condo or apartment in Miami, as opposed to 0% down for a home in like a.
I wasn't familiar. I've never heard of that, actually, the physicians program. And what was like finding a mortgage? Like, where did you go? Did you start with your first bank and stick with them? Did you shop around?
Honestly, we settled on basically the second bank that we went through. It was SunTrust Truist at this point, and we were actually just really physically driving around at that point, mask wearing and everything. And they were just like, "Oh, let's go just swing by in here and see what they have to say." And sure enough, the gentleman that helped us out said, "I know a guy that actually specializes in physician loans." So we got his contact information, and honestly, he was, I think, not on the older side, but I would say like late 40s, early 50s. But he was actually really a perfect fit. He really walked us through everything, and was really there for us whenever we needed something throughout the process. Which
was he with Truist, or was he like a broker through them? Like, was he formally connected to the company?
Formally connected to the company, yeah.
Okay.
So, this was extending back to essentially that June time when we had that first serious thought as to, we're ready for an actual purchase. And he was actually with us ever since then. And, it's February now, so that's essentially, 8 months down the line. So he has had some patience, put it that way, with us. And, it was really awesome to go through the entire, from the first time when we talked to him to now. He's really not only been a help, but also pretty friendly throughout the entire process. So that was important for us too.
No, that sounded terrific. And then, so for you starting the process, you went to one bank and then you were literally just shopping for other banks. And at what point did you engage with a realtor?
So actually on that first interested property that we had, which was actually, if I'm being honest with you, in the same building that we were renting at, they had posted a sale there, so we just went upstairs essentially.
Yeah.
And the listing agent and realtor that was listing it were both there, and we ended up sticking with the realtor who was listing it online throughout the entire process as well. So she's been with us from point A to now as well.
So you had a pretty IRL process as far as things go, I would say.
Surprisingly,
compared to you literally drove to the bank, found the realtor who was upstairs in your building. So that's interesting, and that's one thing that I feel like people in the industry, because you have a lot of just like older people in the industry trying to sell to millennials, and they always say like everything's going to be online, they're going to be on the internet the whole time, like everything's going to happen that way. And I think this is a good example of like, no, not really. Like you very much want to work with that person.
Yeah, it was surprisingly organic, especially since we are dealing with a pandemic, and I think we just got lucky with obviously still doing the things that we're supposed to do with our mask wearing, hand washing, distancing, etc. But we're able to kind of interact with these people in closed environments, so to speak, and still get what needed to be done.
So, and it sounded like you worked with that realtor for a little while too then.
Yeah, I think she probably got frustrated with us a few times where we were just like, oh, we're interested with this. And then we just said, oh, not really, never mind. So.
Did the realtor recommend other people for you to use, like a bank or, attorney, title agent, other points of the process? Like how much of the realtor's recommendations did you follow for the other people you had to work with?
So one that we did not really question too much was actually going with her recommended title company. Which I think we found out, not actually on Monday, was really associated with her realty business or realty group, which I'm not sure if that's typical or not, but I was just like, oh, this kind of is like a back scratching deal, like, oh, whatever. But so we found that out on the last day. We didn't know about that the entire process going through. And I was just like, oh, well, it would have been nice to know, I think, especially if we wanted to like reach out elsewhere, for example, instead of just trusting this from point A.
Were you under the impression that you could have reached out somewhere?
I think so, but we were. So the reason I think we just went with it, so to speak, was the sellers in this case really wanted to get a quick turnaround and be like done and out. With this property altogether, they actually wanted to be sold and closed in a 30-day period. So as opposed to I think the traditional like 45. So I think we were just kind of trying to expedite the process as best we can. Now, as a answer to basically this same question as well, we took the title company recommendation from the realtor. Yes. However, they recommended also an inspection company, and we decided to branch off on that and do our own thing. We actually had two separate inspections come in and do the same. I know usually you just need one and that's it, but I would say it's a good thing they did because there were some things that one company found and the others did not. So I think that was at least a good catch on a few different areas.
Okay, interesting. And then when you started working with this realtor, did you find that did you put in for properties and didn't get them? Was it very competitive? I think that's the thing that we're really hearing a lot. Like, did you have to go over ask? Like, what was the whole finding a property bid process like?
So, and it's nothing against her. I just think that she may have been a little bit out of her element. So the reason I say that is because we found her in our original neighborhood where we were renting. And then we started asking her to go a little bit outside of that neighborhood, towards more inland. So I'm not sure if that was kind of outside of her comfort zone, like I was mentioning there, but it didn't seem like she was very well versed, so to speak, in not necessarily condo properties, but more so home properties. So it was at times frustrating for us to be like, hey, we want to see these types of properties or similar ones, and then her kind of go off into her own direction and not even, actually sometimes not even able to get those views of the properties that we wanted, and then just throwing her own that we haven't even heard of or seen before. And we're just like, this is counterproductive. This is kind of wasting our time. So that was a little bit frustrating throughout the discovery process, I guess.
And then I'm just kind of spitballing questions as I think
Yeah.
of them here. So we're going to go on this
Yeah.
fun ride together. But um, during the process, what technology was used? Like, how were you able to see what was happening throughout the process? Were there apps you could log into? What updates were people giving to you? Was it good? Was it bad?
Yeah. So it was using a lot of Gmail.
Yeah.
So I
Hmm.
think that's a given right there. But a lot of the times we were really communicating through our realtor with the seller's realtor a lot. And
Hmm.
we were able to use like DocuSign, for instance,
Hmm.
for a lot of just formal documentation to be just signed off on. Uh,
Hmm.
and Truist actually had like kind of their own app, so to speak, or just a web page to go through the whole disclosure process and
Hmm.
finalizing loans and stuff like that. So that was convenient where we didn't
Hmm.
physically be present at a bank or with notary or anything like that, for instance. So that helped out a bit.
Was that for the closing or just kind of the initial pre-approval? Like you still had to close in person, right? It sounded
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
and
So
all like wet signatures, like everything was out on a table signing.
yeah, so the entire closing process, closing, was done in person.
Yeah.
But everything leading up to that, we
Hmm.
were able to kind of do a little bit more electronically.
Okay.
Where again, we were able to sign things
Yeah.
electronically, even
Hmm.
able to do like a what's called a property survey electronically
Hmm.
as well. I mean, there's definitely a good handful of things that we did not have to be present for in person.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, Truist is a huge lender. They're a big time company, so it makes sense that they have a lot of stuff that's really good like that. We talk a lot about technology in the industry on this podcast, so that's why I wanted to kind of ask that question.
Yeah.
What was the most frustrating part of the process?
I would say probably not being able to speak directly with the sellers a lot of the times.
Hmm.
So like you would always be going through your realtor to contact
Hmm.
their realtor to contact the sellers, and then
Hmm.
the sellers contacting their realtor to contact
Yeah.
our realtor. Again, it was just like, why can't I talk to this person directly and
Hmm.
just hash out something that I want to discuss
Right.
through and through? And honestly, that part was frustrating. And at times, again, if I'm being completely honest with you, our realtor sometimes, again, because of the length of time that it took from our meeting her to actually making the
Hmm.
purchase, and that frustration may have boiled over to the whole closing process, where I don't feel like sometimes she really fought for us to on some issues. For
At the closing itself
well,
on
before
Monday?
the closing and negotiating, just
Okay.
final closing prices and some concessions that we had to make as well. So
Hmm.
an example was there was just a patch of past water damage that was dry, no evidence of mold damage or
Right.
anything like that. But it was very clearly, obviously, there before, during our inspection
Yeah.
process, and they were quoting at like a $5,000 repair, and these sellers wanted nothing to do with that,
Right.
and uh, we asked them to either give us a credit for repairs and
Yeah.
labor and stuff like that, and it just felt like our realtor was just like, "Oh, these guys are wanting this. It's ridiculous." But she didn't. I didn't feel like that she was fighting for us
Mhm.
to get that, so to speak.
Did they make that concession eventually, or no? That's something you had to pay for.
Oh, that's something that we eventually had to pay for, and there was
Mm.
one last hurdle at the end too, with permits being
Mm.
still open on the house, and
Mm.
the permit itself I think was for a $20,000 bathroom renovation, and that was
Mm.
open, and the sellers wanted us to pay for
Mm.
extending the closing date, and I was just like, out of principle, no, I'm not.
Yeah.
If you wanted this closed 30 days,
Right.
it's on you. So uh, again, some issues with the realtor really
Mm.
bothering me, but Carla, uh, my partner, was even more frustrated, and she
Yeah.
could get pretty angry at times, as some partners can. And but
Yeah.
otherwise, again,
Mm.
the relationship with our realtor, I think, was a little strained.
Yeah. Do you feel like in the end it was kind of anticlimactic of I'm just happy this is over? Or was there actually like excitement around that final close?
Honestly, I would say it was more relief than
Yeah.
anything. Just having my signature done, getting a little carpal tunnel with signing my name so many times. But honestly, after that was all done, spoken for, going over to the house and seeing it in person for the first time, as ours, pretty awesome.
Yeah, good. What you mentioned a lot about communication in the process. Is there anything else you wish was better going through it?
I mean, I don't know how much better it could have been outside of, again, like I said, directly speaking with sellers as opposed to having to go through a middleman, which like I understand the process and why it had to happen like that, but at the same time, if I want to just directly talk with somebody and say, hey, what are we doing for X, Y, and Z? Why can't I have that conversation? So that part I would say was frustrating to me. And then, in general, actually with Gordon, our loan officer from Truist, his communication was on point. Like there was nothing I could have wanted more from Gordon. And, he even went out of his way just to like check in and see how I was doing a lot of the time during the process. And, he didn't have to do that by any means. He could have been just a regular guy and said like, oh, he'll talk to me whenever I need something.
Way to go, Gordon. Yeah.
So Gordon was an all-star.
Awesome. No, that's good to hear. Was there anything that you learned about home buying through the process that you didn't know beforehand that kind of surprised you?
There's a lot of steps. So, there's the whole, obviously the negotiation part of it at the beginning, like, okay, how much are we going to buy this home for?
Yeah.
And are we going to and the one thing I actually didn't know before is like difference between a jumbo and a standard loan. So like, can we get the scratch enough together to get to like down from a jumbo to a standard loan?
Right.
And if the answer to that is yes, then what do we need to negotiate down to? And then negotiating to that number or as close to the number as you can. And then again, the steps afterwards from there, like especially because we had a shorter timeline, is just getting all of those done well, and then get everything that we need squared away for the closing process itself.
And if someone was about to start the process, or if you were about to, start it over again, what advice would you give?
Well, have an idea of what you're looking for, what your price range is, and I mean, if you have either contacts in certain industries, whether it's mortgage loan industry or even just like contracting and inspection industries as well, get them lined up. Just people that you trust as well, because that's really important too. And I always tell this to patients, for example, like especially if they don't have a doctor in our system, it's just like, well, if you have a good relationship with a specialist or a physician, keep that relationship. Rapport is important. And again, trust is priceless, right? So especially with home buy, because essentially a lot of people are looking out for themselves. So again, you have to also don't forget about yourself while making some concessions here and there.
I think that trust, I mean, it's funny for you to talk about bedside manner, right, of Gordon and the other people you dealt with. But I think that trust is so important and so overlooked, especially for people our age, of like, no, we want to deal with someone, like we need help going through this, whether it be our parents telling us, what they did or other things like that. So I think that is a huge.
Don't get me wrong. If I want to set up a cable internet, trust me, I'd rather just do active chat on the internet.
This is all different.
But for some things, I think having a conversation in person or over the phone or something like that is paramount.
Do you feel like your perception of the mortgage industry, the real estate industry, has changed for better or for worse from this?
That's a good question. I don't have a good answer to that because, again, this is my first time going through this whole process. My father, who I know is very much involved in this industry, and he was also involved in this whole process.
Well, he's a longtime developer.
Yeah, exactly. A general contractor, developer in Rhode Island, still doing it. And again, he was a cog that really helped move this train forward, so to speak, here too. So it's he has a better appreciation of the industry, to answer your question. I think he imparted some of his wisdom upon Carla and myself, but process, I think, is at least for us, it was, again, we tried to make it as smooth as possible. I think it worked out that way, but I can imagine so many other wrenches thrown into the process, just slowing things down or stopping them altogether are definitely possible with maybe other cases. I mean, I think we got lucky, if I'm being completely straightforward with you. So
lucky in what way? Some of the people you found that you worked with, or lucky that you're able to get a home and close on it?
Well, lucky that I had someone with the knowledge of the industry to ask the questions that needed to be asked. So, for example, going from a jumbo to a standard loan, I had no idea that was a thing. For a better mortgage loan rate, which essentially dropped us down 0.4%, which that's not nothing, right? So especially extended out over 30 years like we had, that's over 100.
Well, and also what is the difference between those? Why does it matter to the company?
So again, I would say it's more about loan amount. So loan amount and mortgage rate.
Well, I'm saying when something's a standard loan, what can they do that they can't do with jumbo loans?
So again, I think jumbo loans are a little bit more unlimited with the amount of money that they're able to loan to you. So I think that's the biggest thing for someone like me who's may or may not have the funds to move forward with a certain property. So
well, also if something's a standard loan or what's called a qualified mortgage, they can basically sell it to the government. And with a jumbo loan, they can't. So your loan, more often than not, is getting sold to someone else. And now your servicer is a different company that you're going to be paying that may or may not be Truist.
Thank you for the knowledge.
Yeah, exactly. So that's also why the cutoff is different, because Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac, they'll buy certain loans at certain amounts. So
I did not know that.
Yeah, that's why it matters. So learning is fun. I think that covers a lot of the questions I had. I mean, I think it was just interesting hearing about your process. That's exactly what we wanted. Is there anything else you want to touch on about the home buying process?
Well, now that you mention it, so I know you mentioned technology and you love talking about technology. What other technological applications have you heard of in this home buying process?
I was curious because some banks, and especially some realtors or title companies, they'll have more of portals where you can get updates in real time about what's going on in terms of the communication and the status of what you're doing. So I was curious to see if that was the case. One thing that's becoming more prevalent in the industry is digital closings or hybrid closings, where you're doing some of the process virtually, or what's called RON, remote online notarization. It doesn't sound like that was the case for you. It's still a pretty small part of the ones in the industry. So those are the things that we're seeing. I'd also be curious now with realtors, some people are showing homes virtually opposed to the physical walk-ins. Was very curious. Most people, myself included, my home search would start with a Zillow or Redfin or a company like that. So I think it was interesting that it wasn't. So it's just all these little touch points of where exactly you were, how you were engaging with people was what I was
going to say the SunTrust Truist did have a portal and kind of had a checklist set up so that you see where you are technically in from start to finish.
Did you check that often or at all?
Well, that's the thing that I really had to upload documents to and have them put it through their underwriting, et cetera. So I think that was part of my process, so to speak. But also there was a few virtual tours that were available, but they were not in properties that we were interested in. So we saw that, but it wasn't. It just so happened the property was not something else.
Yeah, I mean, I was just kind of curious. It's going to be a lot different depending on the area. And I forgot if you touched on this, but was this the first home you put an offer on? Or were there other ones you put an offer on that you lost out on?
So that first one in June that I was mentioning previously, we did put an offer on, and the owner didn't even come back, but only ended up selling for I don't know, 40,000, 50,000 more than our original offer, which I was just so. Yeah.
I was trying to get a sense of that because because there aren't too many homes for sale right now that price has really gone up and it's been very competitive. So
I mean, I'll just say this though. I mean, the industry in South Florida is ridiculous. There is a lot of cases where you would see a property go up and less than 2 weeks later, it's closed or contingent, and just already off the market. And again, some of those, it's rare to see a good property on the market for more than 2 weeks.
You almost wonder if something's wrong with it if it's been on the market for a month.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So you would see something on for like, I don't know, 100 days or something like that. It's like, okay, what's wrong with this place? But yeah, it's just on fire down here, literally. Just people buying up everything they can.
Nice.
Yeah.
Well, good. Well, this was really interesting. I think you touched on some good points that I'm happy we went through. Thanks for doing this during your lunch break or whatever it may be too. The last thing I did want you to touch on, because you are working with COVID patients and all other patients right now, but while you have the microphone to the thousands of podcast listeners that are listening right now, what information do you want to get out there regarding COVID? This is normally when I have someone plug whatever they're doing, but for you, like, the public health warning brought to you by Dr. Justin Dowlatshahi.
So I would just say trust the process, using a Philadelphia term right there for you.
There you go. I like it.
So I was going to say, it's been slow with the rollout for this vaccine. Both Moderna and Pfizer are getting out there now. I think yesterday's numbers were like 1.6 million vaccinated. So, just remember where we started at, only a few 100,000 on one day. And again, that number is more than tripled at this point. So the process, we are getting there. Okay. So be patient. Don't abuse your hospital system's phone lines or MyChart portals or whatever that you have to go through to get in contact with your healthcare provider. We will get everybody that wants one with a vaccine. So we will get vaccines into arms. Just be patient.
Yeah, I'm hoping my expected value for mine is 4th of July. So figure it's going to be a long America. Yeah. Well, thank you so much for your time. Thanks for all your work and what you're doing right now, both in healthcare and the time you spent today. This was a lot of fun.
Yeah. Well, if you want to have me back at any point, just let me know.
Oh, we'll see how the responses are.
All right. Sounds good.
Cool.
All
cool.
Right. Bye.
Thanks, Boo Boo.
No problem.
Thanks for listening to Lodestar's Lending Leaders. Please like and subscribe wherever you get this podcast. If you have any ideas for upcoming episodes or would like to be a guest, please reach out to us at lendingleaders@lssoftwaresolutions.com. Hope to hear from you.